Hey there guys, what is up? It's me, Harry Sandberg, back here with a brand new video, and Sony Pictures released a brand new first look at Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, the sequel to one of the greatest Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which introduced the world to the cinematic Spider-Verse, with its sequel's title suggesting that we're going to get so many more Spider-People. Sony just had to deathly hollow the film into two separate parts to keep us anticipated for what could come next. The first look has so many different hidden details and Easter eggs laid within its ginormous web, and being the Spider fan that you know I am, I just had to break this down frame by frame to point out all the details and visuals that you might have missed upon your first viewing. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The trailer opens on the phrase "in another universe," which has emphasis on the first another, signaling how in this vast multiverse between the MCU, the Venomverse with Venom and Morbius, we are now heading back into the universe of Miles Morales. However, as the text begins to glitch, which was also prominent in the first film, the language of the text begins to change. The first language is in Hindi, which points towards the introduction of Parvatio Prabhakar, who in the comics on Earth 50101 is Spider-Man in India. His origins in the comics differ to those of Peter Parker, but do sound very similar. In the comics, he lived with his Aunt Maya and Uncle Bim, who moved from a small village to Mumbai. Unlike the origins of other spider people who gained their abilities by being bitten by a radioactive spider, Parvati gained his powers after encountering an ancient yogi. After gaining his abilities, he doesn't use them, even refusing to help a poor woman who's being attacked by 7 men. However, it is after he hears the cries of his uncle who tried to help the woman that he truly learns in that moment, like all spider people, just how responsible he has to be with his powers. The next text is in Spanish, which obviously refers to Miles Morales, who is half Puerto Rican, but also Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, who is half Mexican and lives in Nueva York. We then seemingly pick up right where we left off with Miles, with him laying in his bed listening to the song Sunflower. However, he looks noticeably older, implying that some time must have passed. As the portal begins to open, we see items floating around, including a cup of noodles, which is very popular among college students, and a comic book that reads, "True Tales of Spider-Man, Save the Multiverse. Now What?" Written by Miles himself, as noted at the bottom of the cover, with him drawing a new spider suit with a new logo, which we get a better look at the end of the trailer. There's also the name Sanford Green in the bottom left-hand corner of the cover, who is an accomplished comic illustrator on comics such as Army of Darkness, Spider-Man, etc. And this comic is made by Marvel Comics, so I guess Marvel Comics exists within Miles' universe. The camera then zooms out to reveal the portal that Spider-Gwen is coming through, revealing this hexagonal shape, which then shows back up later in the trailer as the way beings are able to transport themselves through the Spider-Verse. You can also see various numbers flickering around the shape, maybe some form of code for the system Gwen is using, and I also love how the portal is affecting the items around Miles, with them glitching in and out. Just another example of how the animation and art style of the last film carries over to this one in a big way, and is just amazing. Gwen Stacy, voiced once again by Kate Bishop herself, Haley Steinfeld returns, along with Shamik Moore as Miles, and you can see behind Gwen the spiderweb design of the Spider-Verse. The chemistry and relationship between Miles and Gwen is shown greatly through the short exchange between the two, with Miles even being awkward around Gwen, as all guys are when their crush drops in from another universe. The glitching of Miles' room still continues until the portal closes, with one of the items that falls being a picture of Miles and his dad, along with a plethora of stuffed animals, figurines, and Pokemon-type trading cards. I particularly love how Miles uses his sticky Spidey feet to grab one of the plushes and hide it behind his pillow. In this shot, you can also see one of the multiverse jumping bracelets on Gwen's wrist, which we saw Spider-Man 2099 strap on at the end of Into the Spider-Verse, implying that Gwen has met him and is maybe bringing Miles to meet him. Maybe that's what her long story implies. We can also see that Gwen has decided to trade out her light blue ballet shoes from Into the Spider-Verse with some light blue Converse shoes, obviously taking inspiration from Miles here, who in the first movie wore a pair of Air 1 Jordans. Miles continues to try and make his room look more adult, including throwing things out of his room and kicking another plush and what looks to be heart underwear under his bed. And while he does this, Gwen observes some of his figures, one of which is the Moose figure from the film The Mitchells vs. the Machines, a Sony animation movie produced and written by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who also worked on this film and Into the Spider-Verse. Gwen then whips Miles' sketchbook, which has his signature being visible on one page, along with a sketch of the city on another, one that he must have drawn while out in the town as Spider-Man. Behind Gwen, there also looks to be a picture of Miles' dad and Uncle Aaron, along with the Spidermobile, Peter's car from the comics. Inside the book, we can also see a shopping list which has milk, eggs, tortillas, and avocados, and a one-way bus ticket to Schenectady, New York to Brooklyn, New York. Schenectady, New York being the birthplace of Dr. Otto Octavius in one universe, maybe the birthplace of Olivia Octavius in Miles' universe, who we saw in the last film. However, this could also be the location of the Alchemax facility which Peter and Miles had to break into in the last film, seeing as they did have to take a bus to get there. And then of course the picture of Gwen, which Miles gets super embarrassed about, but is actually a really good drawing. You'll also notice that Gwen's hair is considerably longer than in the previous film, another sign that time has probably passed since they last saw each other and since we last saw them as well. As Miles begins to ask Gwen why she came, there is a poster of a big black dot with an eyeball in it. Maybe a clue towards the main villain of this film, the Spot, who is rumoured and somewhat confirmed to appear. He is also known as Jonathan Owen from Earth 616 in the comics, and was roommates with Quentin Beck's Mysterio and worked for Kingpin Wilson Fisk, who was the main antagonist of the last movie. He gained his powers from an experiment where he tried to mimic the powers of the Vigilante Cloak, and succeeded, creating a solid black portal which he then stepped into. This caused other portals to open, and when he returned to his reality, the spots became one with his body, and his body was bleached white. The spots themselves were in fact portals which he not only uses to fight his enemies, but also teleport with. Gwen invites Miles to go with her, but he can't because he's grounded, and then she jumps out a window, thankfully not breaking her back in the process. Sorry. And seemingly convinces Miles to go after asking him,
"Is Spider-Man grounded?"
as the screen cuts to black. The music then kicks into high gear, showing Miles being transported through the hexagonal portals. However, he doesn't seem to be wearing one of the bracelets, so it'll be very interesting to see how he ends up there, as well as a better shot of him in his new suit and his new logo. The camera then zooms out to show the Spider-Verse in its full glory, with the number of hexagonal shapes varying along the path, with some having 2, some having 3, and others being standalone. These portals drop him into a brand new universe, which turns out to be the universe of Parvatirupakan, making this setting Mumbai, which is shown through the various words that pop up through this sequence. I did do my best to translate the words through the analyzation of the different characters, but just kept getting repeating letters that didn't make much sense. However, based on the surrounding atmosphere and situation, maybe these letters could be honks and yells from people on the streets below as Miles falls, since he is going past different roads. And we also see billboards and signs with similar lettering. However, I can deduce one of these being the word "flip" in Hindi as Miles extends his web, which is also something the filmmakers and animators did during the sequence where Peter teaches Miles web swinging in the first movie. I love the art style of this universe, making it unique and different to that of Peter and Miles, just like we saw with the other Spider people like Spider Noir with his being black and white, and Spider-Ham being cartoony. As Miles continues to swing through the city, you can also see that the glare of the sun is actually this very interesting pattern, and the music shifts with a noticeable sound of a sitar being played. Further showcasing this as the world of Spider-Man India. Spider-Man 2099, also known as Miguel O'Hara, who made his appearance at the end of Into the Spider-Verse, once again voiced here by Oscar Isaac, tackles Miles in mid-air and comes out of one of the hexagonal portals. Miguel is from Earth 928 in the comics and comes from Nueva York and actually worked at Alchemax. He gained his powers after the ingestion of a hallucinogen called Rapture, slipped to him by Tyler Stone. In an attempt to get the hallucinogen out, he turned to a genetic procedure which was then sabotaged by his supervisor, Aaron Delgato. However, he survived, and his DNA was mixed with that of a spider, giving him his spider abilities. More Hindi words show up as the two slam into a pavement and even getting a reaction out of one of the citizens walking by, and the Spider-Man 2099 theme begins to play as the two struggle in midair, giving us a taste of what his theme could be in the movie. As Miguel grabs Miles, his bracelet reads 928, which references Earth 928, where he is from, and the two continue their tussle on the Nueva York highway. We also get a shot of Miguel using his webbing, which is more laser in nature compared to the webbing used by Miles. We also get more words to break down. To the left of the two in big red letters is the word Rapture, the drug Miguel was given, which led to him gaining his abilities, and then a sentence reading, Por favor siga el límite, which translates to, please follow the limit, because it's a highway. Now the biggest question here is why Miguel is fighting Miles. Of course, as noted earlier, Miles wasn't wearing the bracelet that would allow him to travel between universes, so maybe Miguel is trying to intercept him, trying to get him to stop. I don't think they're going to be making Spider-Man 2099 the villain though, since he seemed to be recruiting different Spider people at the end of Into the Spider-Verse in the post-credit scene, where we see him go to Earth 67, meeting the animated Spider-Man. Maybe this could be Miguel testing Miles, preparing him for the threat they're about to face, who also has similar portal abilities. Just like how in the first film, the Spider people tested Miles to unlock his new abilities. And then with one final throw towards the camera, Miles' new logo is shown in full. But there are blink and you'll miss it references to other Spider people who could appear in this film, just like in the closing glitches, which I'll go over in a moment. The first is Miles' old logo from the first film on a red circle with a yellow background, which is the color scheme of Spider-Woman. There's also one on a solid red background with lines jutting out, which could be Old Man Spider or Dr. Aaron Eichmann, who builds a mechanized Spider-Man suit. There's also one with a mix of pink and yellow, which I couldn't seem to pinpoint a specific Spidey to. And the final one being a green, blue, and red, which matches the color scheme of Penelope Parker from Earth 11. We then get the title of the film with the words Part 1 graffitied over it, just like how most graffiti artists would paint over something that is already there, with Part 2 being confirmed in an interview for 2023, while this film comes out October 7th, 2022. However, as I went through the glitching title sequence that reveals the title, I spotted, no pun intended, a few details which point towards not just the villain, but also a few more Spider people coming into this movie. In one frame of the logo, you can see spots beginning to form throughout the word Spider-Man. Now, of course, this could just be a reference to the amazing art style the animators used to invoke the classic comic book feel for the movie, but could also be a reference to the underlying villain, the Spot. Now, as the title glitches, one of the slices has a black and white color scheme, signaling the return of Spider-Noir, which could also point to the returns of other Spider people like Spider-Ham and Penny Parker. There is also a frame that shows the Spider-Man logo with a 3D yellow background, which have the same design as the logo for the Japanese Spider-Man TV show, which is a live-action show that ran from 1978 to 1979, and followed motorcycle racer Takuya Yamashiro, who gains his abilities from a bracelet which is given to him by an alien from the planet Spider. This bracelet not only allows him to have the Spider-Man abilities and weaknesses of a spider, but also allows him to have vehicles such as a car called the Spider Machine GP7 and an aircraft called the Marbler, which can turn into a giant flying robot, which would be awesome to see in this film, and I hope we get to see, seeing as Japanese Spider-Man is one of my favorite incarnations of the web slinger. And that about wraps it up for my trailer breakdown. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you go down below, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all my uploads, and make sure you hit the bell to join the Nerd Notification Squad so you can get notified of my future uploads. And also go down in the comments, let me know if there was anything I missed in this trailer breakdown, and let me know your excitement on a scale of 1 to 10 for this film. Mine is honestly a solid 10, maybe even higher. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.